Did you know Prophet Muhammad healed the blind? One day in the battle, a man came to Prophet Muhammad and his eye had fallen out of its socket. Prophet Muhammad placed it gently back in the man's eye, grabbed some of his saliva and rubbed it over the eye and made a prayer to God. And miraculously, he could see again. And it's reported that the man could actually see better out of this eye than his other. Isn't that incredible? What do you guys think?
Cool story, Lily J, but let's pump the brakes. You're quoting a source compiled 200 years after Muhammad's death, nearly 800 miles away in Baghdad. That's like trying to rewrite the American Revolution using secondhand rumors from the 20th century inside a biased echo chamber. And the other miracle claims in later hadiths, they fall apart just as fast. Even worse, the Quran itself repeatedly denies that Muhammad could perform miracles. They say, "Why has no sign been sent down to him from his Lord?" Over and over, Muhammad is depicted as saying, "I'm just a warner. I don't do miracles." If he was performing miracles, why not just point to them? That's what Jesus did. He said, "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works." Jesus pointed straight to his publicly verifiable miracles. Muhammad, just denial after denial. These later miracle stories aren't just distant and late, they contradict Muhammad's own words. And if Muhammad was really out here performing miraculous healings, you'd think his medical advice would be at least somewhat reliable. Instead, we get gems like, "Flies carry disease, but the cure is in one wing, so just dip it in your drink." Or how about this one? "Eat 7 dates every morning and you won't be harmed by poison or magic." Guess he skipped that at Khaybar, where he was poisoned by a little Jewish woman. With hadiths like these going viral on the internet, more Muslims are either leaving Islam or becoming Quran-only Muslims, realizing how absurd these traditions are. Now, let's contrast that with Jesus' miracles, where we actually have solid historical grounding. Take Bartimaeus near Jericho. His healing is recorded in Mark, Matthew, and Luke within decades of the event. But here's the twist. According to the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus hadn't healed anyone in Jericho before. So how was Bartimaeus so sure that Jesus could restore his sight? John's Gospel fills in the missing piece. Jesus had already healed a man born blind in Jerusalem, about 15 miles from Jericho. Word spreads. Bartimaeus hears about it, and when Jesus passes through, Bartimaeus calls out in confidence, knowing exactly who he is. This is what scholars call an undesigned coincidence, casual interlocking details across independent sources, creating a puzzle that only fits together if the events actually happened. Mark isn't copying John here, Mark came first, yet his account makes perfect sense in the light of John's. This is the kind of subtle realism that you get from eyewitness testimony, not legend. And speaking of John 9, the pool of Siloam, where Jesus healed the blind man, was actually discovered by archaeologists in 2004. No, that doesn't prove that the miracle happened, but it does confirm that John was reporting real places and events. Here's another example. In Matthew 11:21, Jesus rebukes Chorazin and Bethsaida, saying, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes." But Matthew never explains what mighty works he's talking about. Now, when we turn to Luke, things click into place. Jesus healed people and fed the 5,000 near Bethsaida. That makes perfect sense of Matthew's words. And then, 2 chapters after the feeding of the 5,000 in Mark, we get another piece of the puzzle. Mark records Jesus healing a blind man in Bethsaida, but first he leads him out of the town before performing the miracle. When the blind man is healed, Jesus tells him not to even go back to Bethsaida. That's a weird instruction. Mark never explains it. But when you connect it to the woes Jesus had already pronounced over Bethsaida, suddenly it makes sense. Matthew records the woes, but he never explains the miracles. Luke records the miracles, but he doesn't link them to the woes. Mark records Jesus leading the blind man out of Bethsaida, but he never says anything about the woes. Each gospel contains independent details that only make sense when pieced together, exactly what you would expect from real eyewitness accounts, not corrupted and fabricated legends. So what do we have? Jesus' miracles, early, independently attested, packed with eyewitness detail, and backed by archaeology. Muhammad's miracles, late, distant, contradictory, and wrapped in pseudoscientific nonsense. And here's the real irony. While Muhammad denied working miracles, he admitted Jesus healed the blind. Even Quran 3:49 has Jesus saying, "I heal the blind and the leper, and I give life to the dead by Allah's permission." So Muhammad himself acknowledges that Jesus had real miracles, while his own followers had to invent them for him centuries later. Muslims, take a hint.